Thank you, President Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. Don't believe what you read in the press. The truth is a lot worse. Obviously, having a fairly high-profile job, I'm not going to really talk about my job, more about me and a little bit about what makes me tick, if that's okay. You'll tell from my accent I'm not from round here. I was born in the city of Newcastle upon Tyne, famous for brown ale, ships, football and deck. But it's quite, don't fall into the trick of believing it's like Sheffield, Manchester and Leeds. It's not. It's a very different sort of city. When you wake up in Newcastle, you see the grey skies, you feel the cold air, you see the steep river valley, the bridges, the castle, the Georgian streets, and then you hear a very loud and strange accent, and you could only be in one city in the world. Not like Leeds, Sheffield and Manchester. It's much older, goes back to the days of the Romans, has a Norman fortress. It was a big city in medieval times, and in the Industrial Revolution, it was the birthplace of the internet of its day, the railway, and the electric light bulb. Forget Edison, it was Swan. Now, I've worked and lived all over England, in York, in Cornwall, in London, and I've also lived overseas in Los Angeles, in Copenhagen, and now, of course, Wellington. It was a really special pleasure for me to go back to my home city to work as the CEO of the City Council. Give you a few of the more light-hearted moments. Reading the citation for Freedom of the City for Alan Shearer, the footballer, live on Sky Sports. On one occasion, at St James's Park, the football stadium, the chairman of the club said, the Prime Minister's coming to the game against Chelsea today. We lost, by the way. He said, do you want to come down and greet him? He said, the problem is he's running late. It's going to be 15 minutes after kick-off. I said, you've got to be joking, Freddie. I'm not missing the game. When I left the City Council, I joined the private sector, a sort of technology company. And because I was moving to the private sector, there was a big storm in the press saying, it's not right, the chief executive's going to that private sector. This is not right. And there was a headline on one occasion saying, Chief must go now, I've resigned. And my mum worked in a post office in the city, and I was speaking to her on the phone. She said, I saw the article. I said, what did you think? She said, lovely photograph. Final story from my time at Newcastle was the redevelopment of the football stadium, St James's Park. Won't go into all the details, but I'll give you an appetizer. I mean, it had everything: political intrigue, sex, the news of the world, front page, with the fake Sheikh, if you've ever heard of him. Newcastle United was his first break in journalism. It's a story I can write a book on, and I'm taking some lessons from John earlier. So who said the town hall was boring? But I do have other interests. I think there is a danger when you do a job like mine that it does become all-consuming, and you could become a bit of a Billy No-Mates if you're not careful. So I do have other interests. Family and friends, of course, come first. I was the oldest of 5. And my siblings, they're all over the world, in Seattle, in Greece, in different parts of the UK. Only one of them lives in Newcastle, funnily enough. I'm married with 2 boys, Daniel and Jack, who are 14 and 12, and they're in England at the moment, so I'm using Skype a hell of a lot. Sport is very important to me. Coming from Newcastle, it's got to be football first. Disappointing yesterday with the Phoenix. You know, Bill Shankly, who was the manager that transformed Liverpool, once said, football is not a matter of life or death. It's much, much, much more important than that. And for my sins, I'm a Toon Army fan, which is not good at the moment. But I don't just watch it, I play a bit. Well, sort of, anyway. And there's a very famous former manager, unfortunately died a few years ago, Brian Clough. He said, if God had meant football to be played in the air, he'd have put turf in the sky. Play the game the right way. Skill, pass on the ground. So that's what we do at the Seatoon 99s. We play at the Theatre of Dreams in Seatoon, otherwise known as Seatoon Park, every Saturday afternoon. And it was quite an eventful Saturday this weekend, just gone. I managed to score my first goal ever for the team. And what was shocking, it was intentional. It wasn't. I also enjoy lots of other sports, rugby, cricket, track and field, even American football. And I do have a really great collection of programs, World Series for baseball, World Cup games, FA Cup finals, Olympic games, etc. I've been involved in the art scene in England, at the Theatre Royal in Newcastle, which is a second home for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and in the York Theatre Royal too. And I've also had some involvement in sort of social programmes. So I was on the board of the Housing Corporation in England, which looks after the third sector. It's quite extensive, and I think there are a lot of great lessons here for us here in New Zealand. And I used to be involved in the Prince's Trust for Yorkshire. I love my cinema, which I suppose, having lived near Hollywood and now in Wellywood, is not surprising. I'm really looking forward to the Dock Edge Festival. If you haven't been, go to it in the Roxy. It's May, June time. And I know that Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are what are most closely associated with Wellington film. But for me, what we do in the shadows really captured the quirky nature of Wellington. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's great fun. So I'm really delighted to be in Wellington. I love living in Breaker Bay, except when we have a southerly. You are at one with nature. But I hope you've gathered from what I've said, I like to be straightforward and direct. I think we can do something really special in Wellington, and I have no intention of being Billy No Mates. Thanks for listening.